This is the Bro Show. Here's Brody Brazil.
All right, A's fans, so it pretty much all comes down to this, right? The next couple weeks will help us determine what this has all been leading to for about the last 3 months or so. And not to disrespect the beginning of the season, but for the A's, I mean, it actually started in late March into April, even through all of May and half of June. We just didn't get a read on this team. They were trying to be consistently around the 500 mark, and they did achieve that. But it just all of a sudden got very special mid-June. I think we could all see that. Then there was that question of, does this last through the All-Star break? How long will this last? Is it sustainable? Here we are, more than 3 months later since the 16th of June. I think that was officially the tipping point for this group, and no changes really. I mean, there have been some, higher highs and, some lesser highs. I don't even want to say there's been a low in the last 3 months. That's been amazing. So it brings me to 5 questions about this team that I have right now and moving forward. And when I say questions, they're not negatives. They're more like topics that I'm thinking about that may positively, neutrally, or maybe negatively impact this team as they are headed to the postseason. And let's see how far that takes them afterwards in the second season. All right, let's begin with number 1. And I think because Oakland's been doing the opening thing, a lot of questions come up about, well, might they try that in the postseason? But I want to skip on that for just a second and begin with traditional starters. Like, isn't that how the A's are going to start their postseason? Whether it's a wild card game, whether it's potentially straight to the ALDS. So I would have to imagine that Mike Fiers and Edwin Jackson are your, I don't even want to say 1 and 2. I want to say 1A and 1B. And I'm not sure how the team feels about this, but I would have to think that those two guys in some way, shape, or form, depending on who the opponent is, where the game is, and the timing of the last couple days of the regular season, right? That all plays into it. The wild card game, if it is that for the A's, will happen on October 3rd. So they'll have a couple days, 2 days specifically, to try and time out who pitched last, when they pitched. And that's why wrapping this up for the A's, knowing the situation earlier than later, would be a lot more beneficial, because then if somebody needs to be skipped so that they can be timed out properly for that wild card start or that ALDS start, it'd work a lot better. So Fiers and Jackson, to me, are 1 and 2 respectively. Is it Fiers for me probably starting the first game of the postseason? I'd have to think so. His record, his recent postseason experience, and still what a gift for the A's to get him when they did, how they did. The Mariners didn't block it. It was after the non-waiver trade deadline, meaning Fiers had to go clear waivers. Seattle had a lesser record. They could have blocked that, and it's still amazing to me that as I tape this right now, in all of his starts, the A's have only lost one of them, his most recent one, to Tampa the other day. So pretty much every time he goes out there, he gives his team a chance to win. I think they feed off that. I think that's why he's probably, for me, the opening starter, the first starter, the first traditional starter in a postseason series. And Edwin Jackson, again, not far behind in that regard, because I think, certainly he's proven his value, he's proven his worth, he's proven exactly, what the A's saw in him when nobody else saw something in Edwin Jackson back in, I want to say, late June is when they picked him up. So again, Edwin Jackson to me is a postseason starter, probably your second guy. And in that sense, if the A's do play a wild card game, obviously Edwin Jackson would be starting, and if they advance, he'd be starting the ALDS game 1, and that is of equal importance starting a series. But the biggest question I have, going back to the opener thing, will the A's try that in a postseason situation? I really don't know. I have some thoughts that they've been doing this the last couple weeks and months of the regular season because they have to. But of course, you're cutting it down to a 3-man rotation in the playoffs. So are you really going to go the opener route, say, over a Trevor Cahill in a home game? if he's healthy. Again, that's a big question mark right now. Or a Brett Anderson in a home or a road game. Or maybe you just skip the whole opening thing and maybe you just start Chris Bassett in a Game 3 situation or a third game of your playoffs. So there's a lot to be answered for me still on if the A's were just doing the opener to get to the postseason or if they think that's a legitimate strategy in the postseason. I will say one disadvantage for opponent batters is, hey, you try facing 4 different pitchers in 4 different plate appearances. It doesn't look like it's been easy for a lot of different teams. So that's my number one question. Assuming Fiers and Jackson are 1 and 2, who is number 3? Is it an opener, or are you going to go a more traditional route in the second season? And yes, it's probably a 3-man pitching rotation for the A's in the postseason. Second question for me, does home and road even matter for these A's? Now, as I tape this, again, they are right on the Yankees' tail in trying to grab the top wild card spot, something that has just been out of reach and just barely unattainable for what seems like months now for the A's. You know, they've been behind the Yankees 6-5, 4-3, 2, 1.5 games, and just haven't been able to overtake New York. Now, the Yankees do have a tough schedule in their final less than 2 weeks of the regular season. Tougher, you would think, on paper. So I think the A's have a good chance to overtake them and host a wild card game, if that is what it is. But I also want to say that I'm not even sure that the A's in a single game, in an elimination wild card game at Yankee Stadium, I'm not saying they have a worse chance there than they would at the Coliseum. Now it's bizarre, right? Home field advantage is part of baseball. Playing in your home venue is just a huge thing across all sports. But I think if you're the A's and you see the stats this year, specifically offense, they have no problem performing and succeeding in being victorious on the road. That's been a trend of this team since day one, even since before they got red hot and kept it that way. They have been a good road team. So I don't have some specific reservation about them playing on the road in a wild card game or to not have, obviously, home field advantage in an ALDS where it's best of 5 and you only get to play 2 at your joint and the other team gets 3. So does home and road even matter? To me, not a whole lot. The third question I have is regarding the playoffs and the nature of postseason baseball. The A's are an offensive team, powered by offense, fueled by all the runs they score. Home runs, but just runs in general. I mean, look at the extra base hit totals for this group since the All-Star break. It's amazing. And I think on that note, it's an interesting transition into the playoffs where it's all about defense. Yeah, pitching part of that, but I'm specifically talking about defense. Good plays, getting out of jams, whether it's a critical double play, corner outfielders making diving catches. It's all out, every batter. Defense is taken up a notch, and that's something that Dave Stewart reminded me of recently. We were talking about the A's chances in the playoffs, and he says, slow your roll on all the offensive stuff here. Don't you remember the playoffs are all about defense? And again, it's a contrast for this team, the A's, who lately, late August and into September, have been putting up touchdowns, 7 runs or more, on a pretty consistent basis. And they've been winning that way. So a couple things on this note. Will they be affected by the change of the type of baseball to defense first? No, I don't think so. Because if you look at the A's record as it stands right now, in terms of one-run games, right? So I'm talking about just, games where all the little defensive plays matter. They have the best winning percentage in all of baseball. All of baseball in one-run games. All right, so there's that. The other half of it is, a couple years ago, this would have worried me about the Oakland A's because defense was an Achilles heel of the team. It was a rough spot. But I think as this younger group has come in, they're certainly more athletic, for lack of a better word. And I can go across the diamond right now. You could start at the catching position. Jonathan Lucroy has thrown out the most base runners in all of baseball this season as a catcher. I also realize, too, that he's been ran on the most times, but I think that's more of a pitcher holding him on, time to the plate thing. As far as his ability to throw out runners, especially in a pitch out, it's there. Matt Olson at first base, are you kidding me? The guy, as Ron Washington might say, is a picking machine. At second base, you've got Jed Lowry, who's playing literally his best defense ever because he's healthy, and obviously the bat has been doing the same thing. On the left side with Marcus Semien, still, I know the air total is there, but in terms of those critical double plays that we've seen he and Jed turn, I think that's a part of their game. It's a great part of their game. You also, obviously, on the left side of the A's infield have, in my opinion, the American League third base Gold Glove winner this year, Matt Chapman. Right to left in the outfield, I don't know if I've just noticed this more, that Stephen Piscotty is an outstanding defender in right field, or if just more opportunities have come his way in the last couple of months, but he's certainly out there with the glove, has looked sharp. Laser Ramon in center field. What more am I going to say about that? What just an upgrade defensively. An upgrade's a bad word. What a standout defensively in center field he has been, because I'm not sure anybody at the major league level saw this coming. A lot of his minor league teammates knew that he was that good defensively, that aggressive defensively. The arm, his range, his reads, his ability to play the warning track and the walls, it's pretty amazing. And then in left field, I understand there's more of a rotating group of players, and whether it's a Pinder or a Canna, I don't think the A's are in a bad defensive spot there. So again, I kind of went through every position there just to prove the point that I don't think the A's, as much as they are known for being an offensive team, one that can get into these track meets on the scoreboard, I think they're also pretty sound defensively too. Two more things to get to here. The first, being our fourth of five, is playoff and September/October inexperience. Now, you're looking at a group right now with just a little bit more than a third of the guys on the active roster have ever been to the playoffs before. So take three A's players side by side by side. A little bit more than one out of those three have ever seen the postseason, and most of these guys that have are in the bullpen. Most of the position players on the field, Lucroy, Lowry, Piscotty, I think, are the only regular position players to ever see the postseason before. Not just that, let me rewind it a step, to play very, very important September and October baseball as well. I guess this year the regular season ends in September, so it's a hard cut there. But even playing these last couple weeks of September, you're that close to the end, to 162, I should say, not the end, but end of the schedule. And fatigue starts to set in physically, mentally. These guys have been at it for so long. I know. Those of you watching saying, well, you're a big league ball player. What problems should you have doing your job and sustaining? And it shouldn't get more exciting. Yes, adrenaline, we all know, does kick in, but I'm telling you, there's just something we all witness with baseball teams that, everything is magnified. Mistakes, physical ones, mental ones, later in the baseball season as opposed to those made in April, May, and June. And so I think, I'm asking this question because I don't know how it factors in. I really don't. We know one of the benefits of the A's this season is their ignorance, as Dave Stewart recently put it. They've been so ignorant about things, they're not even aware that they're not supposed to be this good yet. They knew they would be at some point, but they're probably about a year early ahead of schedule in terms of this postseason stuff. Go back to spring training. Really? Did I really think this was going to happen? Absolutely not. So I think their ignorance is going to continue helping them, although they can't be ignorant for too much longer in a sense of all the questions and all the, imagine when, I'll say when, not if, when they have the opportunity to get in that clubhouse, spray champagne all over each other, and realize they made it to the postseason here in 2018. It's just one of these things that I'm curious how the playoff inexperience, is it a benefit? Is it something that will be something we notice as one of their inexperience factors that doesn't help them out in some specific way? So that to me is one that I don't have an answer for. A lot of these other questions I've been asking, I've felt a certain way. This one I don't really have a good gut read on whether inexperience will help or hurt these guys out of the regular season and into the second season. And the last thing I have here is satisfaction levels. What are the satisfaction levels going to be like for everybody? Okay, so what am I talking about here? We don't know how this season's going to end for the A's. We're pretty sure at this point, with the 99.4% playoff probability, they will be there in a couple weeks from now playing a postseason game. But everybody's got a different feel about this season and the way it developed, how expectations changed. I think if you ask a lot of the players, their goal down the stretch is to overtake Houston. You got that close to taking the division. They tied Houston with it for a couple different days in late August. Couldn't really leapfrog and get ahead. Of course, the Astros, look, I mean, a lot of times you're hating a team that you're chasing. And I only hate this about the Astros. They keep winning. They built their team the right way. They're not a group of unlikable players necessarily. I can't find something to completely despise about them. But as players get this close to winning the division, of course they get a taste of that. Of course that's what they're going to be aiming for, because even if you come in a little bit less than that, you're still in pretty darn good shape. So are they going to be satisfied if they get a wild card spot and have to play it in that way? Probably. I think just the opportunity to play postseason baseball is, at this point, a huge step forward for this group. The fans. Every fan is going to have a different take on this. And I think you really still have to separate yourself from what you hoped for this team, what you thought they would accomplish, or what you started to think they would accomplish as they got on their run through June, July, and August. And then also the baseline that maybe you set for them months ago entering this season. My point being here, separate goals from reality for just a second. What's going to satisfy fans? So this goes back to my bigger question here, satisfaction levels. How about pundits? How about analysts? How about writers? How about people in the media who had no place putting the A's on their radar? Well, they didn't put the A's on their radar. That's a better way of saying it. The A's didn't have a place on their radar back in spring training, right? They picked this team to, what they picked them to contend for? Last in the AL West. So what are the pundits going to think about the Oakland A's and how their season finishes? Do they have to advance past a wild card game? Do they have to win the division? Do they have to, is just getting there satisfactory enough? So when I say satisfaction levels, I'm curious to see on the last Sunday of the season, once we know how 162 finished, and where the A's will be playing, who they'll be starting off the playoffs against, when, where, how, what will everybody read into that? Will that already be deemed a success? Will that be the cake? And then we're going to put the icing on it, seeing how far they can go. Or is it a flat-out disappointment? And I'd love to know your comments. If you're watching this right now on my YouTube channel, go ahead and put your comments down below. What to you is a satisfaction level for this team? I think the variance of that is what I'm interested in, to see what some people feel is success, what some people feel like, is not enough. Like, where is the happy point for this team to be considered successful? I'll leave it with my answer to this one. I think advancing past a wild card game, if they play one, okay, I'm doing a lot of assumption there on that. The West is still out there to be won. Let's put it this way. Let's make it more fair. If the A's get to and play a very competitive ALDS, by competitive, I'm hoping they win it. But if they get to that point, I think you have to be pretty satisfied. Now, am I writing them off? Am I saying that's as far as they're going? Absolutely not. Don't you think I want to cover a World Series parade? Seriously? Of course I do. So I'm just trying to draw out right now, what's reality for this team? What's a satisfaction level that everybody will be happy with? So there you go. Those are my 5 questions / topics / thoughts. Just to recap, do the A's use an opener at all in the postseason? Does home and road really even matter for them in the postseason? Can they adjust to the defensive style of the playoffs? I think they'll be fine there. inexperience for this group in Septembers and Octobers prior. A lot of these guys in the minor leagues, you don't really play. You don't play at all a full month of September. So, for the Chapmans and Olsons and so on, this is as far into the calendars they've ever played. And then lastly, again, satisfaction levels. Where is everybody satisfied about this team? What in the end already is going to be the satisfaction point for you? But on that note, I just want to say, obviously, I wish him the best. It gives me chills, and I think I'd be lying to say I haven't thought about how magic this baseball season has been and how magic it could potentially continue to be. I've thought about a World Series. I've thought about the A's and Dodgers. I really have. I know it's crazy here in mid to late September to already let your mind go there, but I think that's the beauty of sports. Isn't this whole season the beauty of sports? Expectations were one thing. Reality is something completely different. The Oakland A's are in their own reality. They made this their reality. The last couple months, I appreciate all the support from everybody watching and talking, and the chatter about this team has been there. It's been super exciting. So thanks again for listening here on the podcast as well as on my YouTube channel. And I'll have lots more content as we continue down the stretch. Again, these next 2 weeks are going to decide a lot about the last 3 months and where they've taken us.